So I know this video is like super late at this point, like over a month late, but I don't really give a shit. There weren't any movies that came out in 2020, so I'm not even gonna mention any. But there were some pretty damn good games that came out this year, along with a bunch of games I had to catch up on since I had spent the last 3 years prior literally owning a Switch and a Switch alone. So we're gonna organize this with the games from years past I played first, ranked from worst to best. Then we're actually going to look at some of the games that came out this year. So we're just going to jump right into it. These are the older games that I played. Uncharted Drake's Fortune was just bad. I'm sorry, but it doesn't hold a fucking candle to what comes after. The characters are just so dry, the level design is boring and generic, and this is probably the only game I played this year that I genuinely didn't like. In fact, it's probably the only Naughty Dog game I've ever played that I didn't like. It's just boring. Uncharted 3 in both ways is the best game in the series and the worst in the series. It has some of the best plot points in the Uncharted series, but then there's characters that are there for one half of the game and then fuck off for the rest of it. Although there was a lot of great stuff with other characters. There's some super interesting things that happen in the game that could have been explained in a really interesting way, but they literally just leave it for the player to figure out what the fuck just happened. Like, some of the new characters in this game are awesome, but then they just fuck off for the entire second half of the game. It's really fucking frustrating. There is also this whole ass thing that Naughty Dog just can't be bothered with letting their characters die, and there's parts where they're building up things only for them to completely ditch them by the end of the game, and there's just some laughably bad voice acting, but other than that, it's a pretty decent game. The set pieces still hold up today even after the release of Uncharted 4, and overall I still really liked it. Resident Evil 7 Biohazard wasn't nearly as good as 2, but it was okay. I really liked the new ideas they brought into the game, how the pause menu doesn't actually pause the game, the whole first-person perspective, the derelict house setting. It was all really good. I don't think it was nearly as scary as 2 because there weren't as many super tense moments like sneaking past a liquor in 2. It was mostly just jump scares, which is kind of sad and it makes the whole setting feel kind of wasted. But hopefully in 8, Capcom takes what they learned from 2 and uses it on that. Doom 2016 was a game I played this year, and it really surprised me at how good it was. If you don't know me, I'm not really someone who likes first-person shooters, but Doom is just so fast-paced that it kept my attention for the entire game, and it's just really fun. It feels so different from anything that I've ever played before, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone who's just really into fast-paced games. There's really not much I can say about the Resi 1 remake that hasn't been said already on the game, but better. It's just the controls are really weird at first, but then you get used to it and it actually gets really fun. And it's some of the best level design I've ever seen in a game before. But yeah, overall it's really good. Horizon Zero Dawn was probably the prettiest looking game I've ever fucking seen. The world and art design is just really good. I literally got chills my first time stepping out into the world this game takes place in. But the story was okay and the gameplay was fun enough, but it wasn't great. But overall it was pretty decent and I'd definitely recommend it. Uncharted 2 is the game that brought the whole Naughty Dog standard to life, and it's just a really solid game with a great story, great level design, great characters, and it actually remains consistent with everything that happens in it. Uncharted 3. Mario Galaxy was another fucking amazing game that I played this year, very easily my favorite Mario game, and it actually has a surprisingly touching story behind it all. It doesn't treat you like a child like Odyssey does, and it isn't entirely outdated like 64 and Sunshine. It's just a really good game with some of the most creative level design I've ever seen. Overall, I fucking loved it, and I honestly think the 3D All-Stars collection is worth it for Galaxy alone. Resident Evil 2 Remake is probably the best horror game I've ever played. Like 1, there's not much I can say, except that 2 is probably the scariest game to me because of the fucking plant monsters. Fuck those dudes. But it's also my personal favorite in the series, and overall it's just like a really good game that I would definitely recommend if you just want to scare the shit out of yourself. The Witcher 3 was a game I started back in October of 2019, and damn was it good. I don't think it really needed to be 60 hours long. Some of the side quests were actually really good, and I liked how a bunch of them had different outcomes to them, but the combat was just so fucking clunky. Now, to be fair, I did play the Switch version, so that could be why the combat felt so clunky, but I've also been playing the PS4 version too, and it's honestly just as bad. Now, that could be a testament to how good the Switch port is, or how just okay the gameplay is. But the real diamond in the rough here in this game is the story, which is one of the best video game stories I've ever played. When I played this game for the first time, I thought the story was pretty good, the characters were interesting, and the gameplay was serviceable. When I played it the second time, I just fell in love with this game and found a huge appreciation for how there's tons of different endings you can get, what you do in the game earlier can change the outcome in the future, and the story for this game is just honestly perfect. Now why the hell is The Last of Us only at 3 when I jerked this game off to high heaven earlier in 2020? Well, I played some more games and they were better. Although The Last of Us is a fucking phenomenal game. The characters are so well written. Joel and Ellie's relationship is one of the most touching things I've ever seen in a game. It's scary, it's funny, and I've talked about this game way too fucking much. So if you want to hear me jerk it off some more, go find some other video doing that. But basically the point is, it's good, and if you're into story-based games, this is easily a must-play. Uncharted 4 is the best damn game in the series. I think it's even better than The Last of Us. Probably a very controversial opinion, but I do. It's such a perfect ending to the series, the characters are better, the voice acting is better, the villain is actually memorable this time. You know how I never talked about the villain in any of the Uncharted games? It's because the first 3 Uncharted villains are generic 2-dimensional shitbags so you have to take down. In 4, the villains actually have character. Nobody is just in the game for half of it, and then fucks off for the rest of it. The music is perfect in this game. The set pieces are also my favorite in this series as well. Overall, Uncharted 4 is just fucking perfect. My first time playing through this game was super addicting, and just like The Last of Us, I definitely recommend it if you're into story-based games. Persona 5 is just so fucking good. Before I played this game, I did not feel like a guy who would like RPGs like this. The turn-based combat always felt so boring, like I had died and didn't even know why. But god damn, this game is one of the most immersive games I have ever played. The characters are so good. Morgana is easily one of my favorite game characters ever. And even though the player choice in this game isn't to the extent of Witcher 3's, I honestly like the story for this game better than Witcher's. And to be honest, even though the game is over 100 hours long, I wouldn't cut a single thing from it. I'm honestly loving Royal, which is basically the base game with an extra 50 hours of new content in it. This game was my first RPG like this, and goddamn did I love it. Even the turn-based combat is actually fun. Finding out the enemy's weakness and just comboing them in easily the most flashy turn-based system I have ever seen is just so satisfying. The combat has its issues like the stupid insta-kills, but at the same time, it makes the game more tense. The fucking turn-based combat felt tense. And I haven't even talked about the pure style of this game. Oh boy, the art style is fucking beautiful. There's these gorgeous anime cutscenes, awesome set pieces, and holy shit, the music. This game's soundtrack is easily my favorite game soundtrack of all time. Maybe I'll do a video talking about why the music in this game is so good, but believe me, it's fucking god tier. I really can't wait to get to play Persona 4 Golden on PC when I get that. And I cannot be more excited for Shin Megami Tensei 3 and 5 coming to Switch this year. So now it's time for games that actually came out this year. Like the older games, I'm going to have these ranked from worst to best, and like before, you're probably going to hate me for what I think is best. Now, before you yell at me for not including your favorite game on this list, I'll tell you that I haven't played many new games this year, including the popular games that I heard were good but were either too broke, not interested, or just didn't have enough time to play. So now we're going to get into the 7 main games I played this year. I'm still yet to play Cyberpunk and Persona 5 Royal, and I'll probably just count Cyberpunk as a 2021 game since it's basically not going to be finished until 2021, at least March of this year, but that means I'll get to experience the best version of it. But anyways, let's just get into it. These are the 7 new games I played in 2020. Resident Evil 3 was an honest-to-God disappointment. That's not to say it was bad, because it's nowhere near bad. I honestly kind of like it more than 7, but it's just nowhere near as good or even as scary as 2. There's some really cool gameplay elements in here like the dodging, but Nemesis was wasted, Raccoon City just feels way too small, the level design was a huge step down from 2's, and there's just this weird unbalancement to the amount of ammo given and how much time it takes to kill someone in the game. It would have been so much better if they had just included the original choice system, because without it, this just feels like another generic zombie game, which most of Resident Evil is anything but that. Ghost of Tsushima is so low because there was just such good competition this year. Ghost would easily take the cake for Game of the Year if it had come out in 2019 or 2018, because the gameplay is just that good. I think Ghost of Tsushima is only matched by Doom Eternal in terms of gameplay this year, but it just feels far too short and the story is super generic. And most of the characters, especially the main character and the villain, are all so damn flat and two-dimensional. Some of the characters were really good, but the main character of Jin Sakai was characterized as well as Link from any Zelda game, and that's not a flattering statement. I've been trying to replay the game to see what people love so much about the story, but I'm still yet to find it. Again, it's nowhere near a bad game, and again, in any other year, it would easily be my game of the year. Just not this one when the competition is so high. But this game being so low on my list is just a testament to how good this year's games are. Animal Crossing New Horizons pains me to give it such a low ranking because this was probably the game I played the most this year. I put over 300 hours into this game and I loved it so much, I stupidly reset my island to go back and live through the addiction again, and it's honestly kind of been working. Anyways, it's really good, and like Ghost, this game being so low on my list just shows how good this year was for video games. I was surprised that Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity didn't become as controversial as something like The Last of Us 2 did, because if this game were bigger and had more hype surrounding it, it probably would've. I won't talk too much about this game because I've probably got an analysis I'm going to make on the game sometime in the future, but again, it's a pretty solid game with a really good story that I do recommend if you know what you're getting into. Because this game isn't a prequel to Breath of the Wild, I know it's advertised like that, but it really isn't. If you're only getting this game for the attachment to the Breath of the Wild lore, don't bother and just watch the cutscenes online. But again, it's a solid game that I really do recommend. There isn't really much I can say about Final Fantasy VII Remake that hasn't been said already. It's just got a really good story, great characters, good graphics, good gameplay, and I just really fucking like it. I mean, that's about it. I absolutely love Doom Eternal. Again, I'm not a guy to love first-person shooters, but Doom 2016 was just so unique. It didn't feel like another generic shooter. It was fun, super fast-paced, and that was it. Before I got Eternal, I wasted a bunch of time watching YouTube videos about the game, telling me why it's so good, and those had me coming in with really high expectations, but even those were blown out of the fucking water. Doom Eternal just brings 2016's gameplay to a whole new level. It's harder, there's more gameplay elements, the setting is more unique, hell, even the story, while Doom usually has a really generic story, is slightly more there than 2016's. This game just takes everything I love about 2016 and amplifies it to make easily the best first-person shooter I've ever played. And overall, it's just a perfect game. The only issue I have with it is that there could be a little more of a story to the game, but even that is okay because Doom was never really meant to have a great story. It's super replayable, and almost no enemy encounters like another. I think I'm one of the only two people that likes The Last of Us 2, but this game is just beautiful. The story in this game has honestly changed my life, which no other video game has been able to do for me before. I've played it 4 times in the last 6 months just trying to think to myself, what the hell am I seeing in this game that so many other people aren't? Well, I don't really know, but I do absolutely love this game, and it very easily makes my game of the year. I understand why people hate it, I even sympathize with them, but I just absolutely adore this game. The graphics are easily the best I've ever seen in a game. The story, while lacking a little on the quality of the writing and the side characters, is still pretty much perfect. And the gameplay is also really good, intense, the music is great, and this game somehow beat out Uncharted 4 as my favorite Naughty Dog game. I get why people are mad, and I get why people hate Naughty Dog now, but again, this game is just perfect to me. I have an analysis on this entire game coming in a few months, and I've just been taking my time with it because I want to do this game justice. And those were my top games I played in 2020. I want you guys to know, if you guys haven't seen yet, that I now have a gaming PC, so if you guys have any recommendations for games, please send me some in the comments. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.